Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, today I have Vincent Foresi on the line, and he is president of Link Systems International. Vinny, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Adam. How are you?
Oh, man, it's so good to see you, and I'm excited to have you back on the show. And finally, we've been on this journey together of getting this book together. Took some time. Books always take time, but it's finally out and live. How do you feel?
I feel great. It's been fun. It's been fun working with you and your team. Yeah. And now that it's done and it's out there, I've gotten some pretty fun feedback from people that I know and people that I didn't know.
Oh, well, we're going to go into your concepts of what it means to be all in. I have some examples I pulled out from the book, and I know as we've gotten to know each other, getting into the book as well, I got to learn more about your concepts of what being all in means, and the audience will as well shortly. But we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Vinny, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Vinny, what mission matters to you?
I think there's a couple ways to answer that question. I'd say based upon my career and what I've done, certainly helping and benefiting student success, first-time college students, first-generation college students. That's been something that I've been involved with for most of my adult life. But more specific to that, I've always gotten a lot of questions about, how do I, I'm thinking about starting a business, or I'm in a business, or I'm trying to grow. And the sort of the one theme that I've always honed in on over these years is the concept of being on, that you're just, you're committed, you understand how sometimes difficult your life's going to be to do that. And by the way, we're not talking about people who are starting a company who go out and raise $45 million of capital. And then those guys, that's a much easier, and it doesn't always mean you're successful, but that's a much easier way to maintain a lifestyle. I'm talking about the people who are going to max out the credit cards, who are going to borrow from their parents, who are going to borrow from their friends, and who, if they fail, they're going to have nothing left, and they're going to, disappoint potentially some of the people closest to them. And to those people, I just remind you got to be all in. You cannot half-step this. You can't have one toe in the water and all the rest of your body out of the water. You got to dive in. You got to make it your life. And, I've talked some people out of starting their own businesses with that conversation. I know, some of the bumps in the road that I've gone through that I can share with. And I would say, it turns out that, probably, more than half of my adult friends are entrepreneurs. And so we can, sit around a bar and lament some of the tough things in life. But when you get through it, life can be pretty good when you have those horror stories that you've lived through. And so, encouraging sort of the next generation of entrepreneurs who want to do something that matters is sort of something that means a lot to me and something I get excited about.
And some of the feedback you received, I understand that we're in a couple of homes in the family, and maybe we're on a coffee table or two and trying to get better placement on the mantle. Like tell me a little bit more about this, because I know you have an entrepreneurial family. I think it's awesome.
And certainly, we've talked about this a little bit. There has been certainly some personal benefit to the business, to people that I know in the industry. I mean, I've got a lot of really good positive feedback. Yeah. But, the best feedback I've gotten is from my parents. I put a lot of stuff in the book that I really hadn't told anybody. At the time that I was going through some of those things, the way I had to borrow money and some of the things I put my wife and small children through financially, I never told anybody. I just, my wife knew, and I told her never to tell anybody, and I was embarrassed. And then as we fought through them, I forgot about them. I mean, those weren't the, you like to think about your success stories and your wins, and, you learn from your losses, but you don't talk about them. And so, my mother called me and she was in tears. She's like, I had no idea. And so that was pretty cool. And I know I'm front and center there somewhere in their mantle. And I sent a copy to my brother, Tom, who, he and I are, in a little bit of a personal competition, and I'm 100% positive he's looking for Mission Matters competitors. And he will be publishing his own book sometime in 2023. And Tom, I look forward to reading that if you're paying attention.
Oh, man, it's awesome. So I want to, before we go further into the book, I want to jump around a little bit. I know this, so for those that are watching this is a part 2 of a 2-part interview series that we were doing on Vinny, documenting the journey, the book, and also his story. In the first part of the interview series, we went through a little bit of Vinny's background. We did a deep dive into his business, how he got started as an entrepreneur. But I don't want to assume that all of our new listeners caught the first episode. So we will add a link to that in the show notes. So you can just click on to head right on over and get that and do that deep dive. But Vinny, just keeping it high level today for those that are watching now, maybe tell us a little bit more about your background and really just how you got started as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, sure. Well, I know a lot of people, consider themselves serial entrepreneurs. I am not. I am an entrepreneur by accident, by circumstance. I got a job as an undergraduate in Cambridge, Mass, working for a guy named David Birch, who literally wrote the book on job creation in America. I learned from him. He had a very small company, and a lot of the people there had worked there for a long time. And at some point, I left there with a couple people that had worked there with him. They were starting a company in Atlanta, and I had a girlfriend at the time who was going to grad school. So we dated long distance, and I moved to Atlanta, and there was four of us, a president and four vice presidents. I was the VP of sales, a chief financial officer, a receptionist, and tech support. And, we had a rough go of it, but the husband and wife, who I was very close with, as a matter of fact, they moved to Atlanta into their house for a few months so that I could find an apartment. I was in my mid-20s. Moving to Atlanta from Massachusetts was an eye-opening, a wonderful experience. We did that for a few years. The company struggled, and one of my customers, Paul Jacobson, was out in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and he asked me to come out there. And so I talked to the people that I worked with, and it was very emotional that I was going to leave. But what I told him was, I can still buy stuff from you. I'll just be the buyer, not the seller, but we can do this together and it'll be good for you. And before I did that girlfriend had followed me to Atlanta, and we decided to get engaged. And so now I moved my fiance out to Las Cruces, and we spent a few years out there for a great company. It was bought, and I had a couple opportunities, and one of them, a vendor who was doing software development for us, which was Link Systems. And so I moved my wife and my 2-month-old daughter to Tampa, Florida. And I thought this would be, like everything else I had done, it would be a 3 or 4 year job, and then we'd figure out the next thing. And 3 more kids, and 25 years later, still here, still going strong. My youngest daughter is now just left and moved to Tallahassee to go to college. And so my wife and I, through all those years, here we are, empty nesters, and we're working together in a relatively successful company. I had moved here, took a job as VP of Business Development. And a few years later, they asked me to take over as president and CEO, join the board. Both of the founders have left early. And so I've been pretty much running this thing for about 20 years.
It's an amazing story. And I want to, circle back to the book and get into, some of the nuances and just some of the things that stuck out to me as I was reading. I pulled a couple of quotes or clips here. And I guess the first one I want to bring up is the idea, and I'm pulling it right from the book. So, good credit is for sissies. When I read that, I'm like, oh man, you're talking about being all in here. That's not your everyday advice.
I was a member of an organization of small business CEOs, and we were talking about, we held each other accountable, and some people had family-owned businesses that they took over from their parents, and other people had smaller companies in mind, because there was a sort of small group team and a large group team, and I was too small to be in a large group, and my company was large in most small groups. And just at one point, one of the people was lamenting about this growth opportunity, and it boiled down to not wanting to max out a credit card out of fear of not being able to take it back. And my comment was not good credit is for sissies. It was something a little bit more harsh. But my point was, like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
Then go get a job. Like, if you don't believe enough in yourself. And that quote, the woman that sort of ran our group, who's now actually president of the whole organization here in Florida, she submitted it to they published a book of pithy quotes every year. And my quote got published. Like I said, they had to edit it down to something that they could publish. But I laugh about that still. And I've used similar philosophical comments to people who make the same sort of, I don't want to do this because I'm worried about what this is going to mean. And, that is the crossroads of being all in or not all in. You can't grow because you don't have the money. And by not having the money you just don't want to put it out there. You're afraid, the chances of survival of that company go down exponentially. That doesn't mean that you just still don't fail and now you have maxed out credit cards you can't pay, because I've done that before. But if you're going to really go for it, then you have to really go for it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just liked about the tone of your writing overall and just what you presented is it's a real depiction of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So I mean, you can sometimes have some major swings, right? And I know, and for context for everybody that's watched this, going into the future, we're recording this end of the year 2022 in November, so going into a new year pretty soon. Economy's let's just say not doing all that well per se, and there's a lot of uncertainty just coming off of COVID and a lot of other things and shutdowns and just a lot of opportunity for some, and for others maybe some transition, some pivoting, a lot of other things. So as people are kind of going through this swing, Vinny, just in general, like what kind of things would you tell the entrepreneurs, and like what kept you strong along the way? Because I think at one point in the book you reference, going from 20 employees or something, like swinging back down to one. So you've had some major swings in your life.
That's right. That's right. Well, one thing I do want to say, because I think it's important that my thoughts on this don't get misconstrued.
Yeah.
Being all in is the commitment you need to make. When you think about what you're doing, and if the economy's not right, not doing it is a perfectly reasonable, idea. And some of the best ideas I've ever had were to not do another really good idea that I had. And so, I don't want anybody to hear that I suggest, like, if you have an idea, quit your job, go all in. What it means is, if you're thinking about doing something, there's risks. I mean, the economy, by the way, some businesses thrive when the economy does poorly, and some businesses don't do as well when the economy is really strong. So, you have to sort of understand all the parameters around your market, your idea, what you're looking for, but having a great product idea is nowhere near as important as just being stubbornly committed. The other thing that I'll say too is, you also have to know when to cut your losses, right? Mm-hmm. Like at some point, being all in, you're living in a box with your 4 kids and, nobody's eating and, people are sick and you have that's, at some point you have to say, if it's right, like, I just can't do this. But in between saying go and saying stop, that's sort of what I'm focused on, where I like to give people that advice. And I think I know it's certainly things can be tough on people with the price of gas and the price of food, and supply chain stuff is driving everybody crazy. Even if you have a successful business, when you can't, we can't even sometimes get coffee in the office because our coffee vendors have supply chain issues. But any market is a good market to start the right business. And so, that's sort of my feelings on that.
Man, I'll tell you, as I'm hearing you say this and thinking about the swings in a business and what it takes to make something really happen and break through the marketplace. And that word stubborn, it's a tricky word, isn't it? Like sometimes you're stubborn and it works out. Sometimes you're stubborn and it doesn't, right? So it's a tricky thing to be. I can think about like the Mission Matters story. And I look back some years ago when we first got started, and, we were thousands of interviews in and the revenue didn't necessarily show.
Right.
Like all of the work and all the effort, and myself and the other co-founder, Shirag, we're living this daily, and the work doesn't stop just because, the additional advertisers aren't coming in or the other things aren't coming in. The work doesn't stop. So you find you're working 2-3 times as hard as maybe many others and not making what you used to make at other corporate jobs or other things like that. But man, being like stubborn and staying focused, like it's a thing.
I know I'm right, damn it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stubborn I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And just, and as long, if you weren't sure from the get-go, then you never should have, then you were never all in, you never should have started. But if you believe that you're right, like what you're doing will be successful, it should be successful, and that and not to say that, you look around and say, woe's me, all my failures are
of course
not my fault. It's all these other things that affect me. Say, like, I just haven't figured this out right. So I'm going to try 15 more things because I know I'm right. I know I can do this. I have people around me who I believe in. They believe in me, because that's another thing we haven't really touched on yet is, you need to be all in as the person in charge. If people are joining you, you're signing the paychecks and you're financially responsible for them. It's your commitment that can never waver. The people you employ, their commitment can waver from time to time. They can look at you a little bit and be like, is he the right guy? Like, do I trust her? I mean, that's okay. They're allowed to do that. But collectively keeping that faith that we are doing the right thing, and eventually you'll get that break. What's the thing they always say is, luck is being prepared for the opportunity when it comes, and that's how you make your own luck. And that's another thing that I believe a lot in.
Having your family and having the team on board. I hope maybe I butchered the quote a little bit, but your wife was all in on being all in, you write about. Like, tell me about that.
Well, I'll just a little anecdote. I was while I was going through some of this, I was also just decided for no reason whatsoever that I would get my master's degree at University of South Florida here in Tampa. It wasn't enough to be
you like
going to a sinking ship. I just needed a break. My wife was home with 3 little kids, and I decided, well, I needed a break. I don't know, she didn't get a break, but I got to get a break. But I had a teacher who's become a dear friend of mine, and he taught sort of the entrepreneur track, which really attracted me. And I was old, that was the .com bubble burst. Everybody in college they were in grad school. They had gone right in from undergrad because there was no job to be had. And I was in my 30s, and he asked me, and he always loved to ask me questions because everybody else had all bubbly ideas about what it's going to be like to be an entrepreneur. And I was just the curmudgeon in the back of the room. Went around the room and asked everybody what they think the most important thing about starting a business is. And they said, Vinny, what do you think, Vinny? Tell everybody what you think. And I said, I know what it is. He's like make sure the person that you love loves you enough to put up with this. Because if they're not all in, or if they're not sure how much they love you, your life will become miserable. And I'll say I lucked out on that. Not saying that, it wasn't some bumpy times, but my wife, many times she could have wavered. She could have said, you stop doing this. This is dumb. You're ruining the family. She just made a lot of macaroni and cheese, and our kids are all too little to, that was another thing I just want to point out. My kids read that book. They had no idea.
Wow.
How little money their parents had for a good couple years. And for some good reason, we just kept having kids. It didn't occur to us that maybe we should. And so, but her commitment to me, and more important to the company, look, she'll tell you, she always believed in me, and she always envisioned the life that she'd get at the end of the rainbow, that there would be, a very small pot of gold, but nonetheless a pot of gold. So, I don't want, she wasn't blindly in love with me. She made a very calculated business decision that sort of paid off for her. And so, I love her, but we all agree it was a business decision on her part, not just simply blind love. But, again, it was through communication. Like she had to know what I saw. And I remember I said earlier, and I believe in me. I know I'm right. And she believed in me, and she wasn't always sure I was right, but she believed in me enough to believe that if I believed I was right, that she could go along with it. And here we are.
It's a great story. And I love the frankness of it is what it comes down to. By the way,
it's a terrible story.
No, it's a great story for me.
True story. Well, I wouldn't recommend anybody try to live it. It wasn't fun, but yeah, it's a great story in hindsight now that I've moved way past it. But at the time, that story was awful.
Well, what I like about it, though, is it's preparing entrepreneurs that are either considering going that route, because it's the real. It's not the normal stuff that you're going to read in a book that's like, follow these couple of steps and you'll live all your dreams. So it's real. Number one, it's true. It's your story. So I like it because of that. But I also like it because, especially in these times right now, and just in general, like some people are up, some people are down, some people are sideways. But for those that are down right now, to me, it provides some solace for them to know like other people are going through it. Because as humans, we all want connection on some level. Some people get it from books, or watching a podcast or an interview like this. And for them to hear it, like there's somebody out there that will watch this right now that's at the ramen everyday eating stage. And they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, he did it. You know what? I'm right too. And I'm stubborn too. And I'm going to do it too.
It's hopefully a slightly inspiring story for people who need inspiration. And that's what I hope people get out of it. Not to compare myself to Job, but the story of Job in the Bible, also a terrible, terrible story. It's very inspiring. I don't want to say, but like that, if you read what he went through, that was awful. But if at the end of the story things work out, then in that regard, I'll agree. It's maybe a little inspiring. And I'll say, like I said, not something I talked about a lot before I wrote the book because, it was also humiliating at the time, very, very, very embarrassing. But, having come through it, I now own it and embrace it. And now, wanting to share it as much as I can.
Wonderful. And I do want to spend a little bit of time. So we're not going to give everything away here for everybody watching this, just so we want you to pick up a copy of the book. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course, so you get the rest of the stories. I know there's some other things in there that we haven't touched on intentionally, because that's what you call a teaser. We sell books here. I'm a publisher still. Come on. But I do want to spend some time on your business and what you were working on all this time. So Link Systems International. Tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think this is it'll make sense. So we started, and our biggest thing still is we did online tutoring, but we started online tutoring in 1996. And I joined the company in 1998. And so if now we all take the internet and all that it does for granted, but AOL, we had to unplug your phone from the wall to plug your computer in to use a dial-up modem to connect to the internet. Yeah. This is when we were going to colleges and selling online tutoring. And I'll just age myself here. And if people don't understand this, they can go look it up afterwards. But one of our big selling features was that it worked on a 9600 baud modem. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to have one of those fancy 16.6 or 28.8 modems that were available for sale, but they were pretty expensive. And so, and this is just goes to, but we knew we were right. Right. YouTube didn't exist. Amazon didn't exist. All these things on the internet that eventually generated the bandwidth, which now we all have smartphones. And so getting online and connecting with people and FaceTime, this is all taken for granted.
Yeah.
Back then. And then after a couple of years, and then that whole .com bubble burst. And so, and there's certainly the stories about, the big, $1 trillion valuation companies that completely went out of business. And a lot of stock market was lost. I'm not talking about those companies. I'm talking about the internet companies that were too small and didn't have any capital to fail. Mm-hmm. So they kept going. Now you're one of those companies, so you're going out to people as an internet company, trying to convince people who don't even really understand what the internet is, that this is a good thing. This is good for your students. This is good for your teachers. It was an uphill push. And so, that's sort of but we knew we were right.
Yeah.
We knew this was the future. There's, you could tell what was happening on the internet, what was being built on the internet. We weren't making any money, but we were, but companies were starting to make money. And so we knew, and it was just a matter of, how can we weather the storm? What do we need to do? And, and I would offer, 20% prepayment discounts for customers to give us money in advance. And we had a couple of large publishing companies that were partners of ours that, I knew I made enough friends who had enough clout to sort of help us financially. Again, just weather the storm. And I had a lot of vendors who we owed money to, and I promised them, just trust me. I'm either going to die, literally die, or I'm going to pay you every nickel I owe you. And by the way, some of those companies we still use as our vendors. Some of those suppliers. We've stayed very, very loyal to. All my credit cards were shut off by everybody. They were all maxed out. And instead of, as I was paying them off, but the card was canceled. So I had the debt, the payment, but Link Systems survived through it all.
Yeah.
And, now we focus on, all sorts of things. We have a tutoring product. We have a collaboration tool that schools can use to collaborate with their own students. And we have a math and English product that sort of help students practice, do homework, do quizzes, and they're all doing very well. Our NetTutor product is doing extremely well. We've got about 1,000, K-12 and colleges across the country using our product. We're helping millions of students a year, and it's nice to know. And we get the best part about it. I tell people all the time, if I really, really, really wanted to make money, like if that was my one goal in life, tutoring would not be what I recommend.
Yeah.
There's money to be made and it's a great business to run, but this is something that we feel really, really, really good about. We get letters all the time from people who are saying, I'm the first, my parents immigrated, they saved all their money, they sent me to college. I was in community college. I had no possible way I was going to ever get through community college because I had to take math and I was terrible at math. And, and then, I met your tutor. or your tutors, and and I worked with them, and they, and it's not just that we helped them with the math; they gave me confidence, because that's the biggest thing we do here. It's the empathy, because a lot of students will come to us and we'll say, "How can we help you?" And the first thing they say is, well, "I'm terrible at this. I can't do math. I don't understand science. I'm not smart enough to be in college." It's they've been beaten down. They don't have faith in themselves, and our job is to help them become an independent learner, right? Like, so we don't want them to come to us every day, all day. That's not what our customers want us to do. That's not what the students want to do. That's not what we want them to do. And the way to get them to become sort of independent learners is to first, you got to break down all those barriers for confidence. Of course you can do this. And then we help them remember, what did you learn in class? What does your book say? Are you in a study group? Like, there's all these things you can do, and then we're always here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you're stuck, you can always come back. And I think that's very rewarding to us. I know that, 99.9% of the 200 employees that we have here that's why they do it. Most of them have opportunities to probably leave here and go do things for more money. But one, I'm a very loyal employer. It's really, really, really hard to lose your job here, because I know what I went through, and I'll give you a third, fourth, fifth chance. So, you leave and you go to something better, but you don't know what's going to happen in the next few months with there. We've had people leave and then ask if they can come back, and we let them back. But that's really sort of what our company's about. It's about the people that work here, and it's about the students, and then of course we try to partner with the colleges, because that's another thing you can't underestimate, is that the people, talking about people who have jobs who didn't pick the job for money, the people that work in the colleges and the public school systems in this country are just, they're great people.
Absolutely.
They're dedicated to students. And I'll just also point out, and they've gone through a heck of a couple of years. And still, in some parts of the country are still going through it. We have a lot of customers in California, and, the California schools still aren't all entirely open. Still having challenges. And so, well, thanks for asking, so that's our story.
It's a great story. And you've been there. So some of the people that are watching this, I love that. And this is my moment for that whole, when I was a kid thing, and the AOL and the plugging in the 90s. You started in the 90s. I mean, so you've been, from the beginning to now. I'm just curious, from your vantage point, in your space, in the education space, the online space, any trends that you noticed, or anything interesting that you care to comment on, just industry wise, that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that we have not figured out how to use internet, and just as a global concept. And I know there's talks about the metaverse, and I'll let people a lot smarter than me figure out and tell me what the metaverse actually is. That's not my thing, but we're just figuring out the power of what we can do, and some of the online tools. And I'm not just talking about what we do here at Link Systems. I'm just saying, the ability now to have some of these, science lab, virtual 3D science labs, just all these things that are coming. And like I sometimes talk about it as the Great Western Land Grab. Like, we still haven't figured this out. The large behemoth companies that are, have been content providers for 100 years. They're changing their business models constantly, trying to figure it out. And so it's fun. I mean, it's not, we don't sell a widget and, every few years we come out with widget 3.0 that has a new bell or whistle. I mean, we are changing what we do, how students access it. 10 years ago, the idea of getting, tutoring on your phone was unthinkable. Now a third of all of the tutoring sessions that we do are on the student's phone. And the reason for that is, that took a lot of investment in our industry, our company, to make sure that worked. And it's because a significant portion, especially of community college students and of high school students, the only internet access that they have is on their phone. And so if you're telling them, you got to go get a tablet, you got to go, kind of find some Wi-Fi, They don't have any, something that some of us just take for granted.
Yeah.
Devices connected, computers, laptops. There's a large portion of the country that just don't have, access. I mean, but there's also, it's something that people don't talk about. There's also a large portion of students, both in college and in the public school systems, who don't have food security.
Yeah.
So, if you're not 100% sure when you're going to get fed once you leave, your high school, where you get lunch, but you're not sure if you're going to eat again before breakfast. Yeah. The idea that you also have some type of computer at home is probably not happening. But cell phones now have gotten pretty inexpensive, and there's a fair number of students who actually are able to at least get those devices. That's how we're able to help.
Yeah. Well, Vinny, I have to say it has been great having you back on the show, and I'm having so much fun promoting this book with you and look forward to continuing to promote it with you. I just have to ask, what's next for you? What's next for the company?
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate to have gotten to the point in my life where, the biggest thing of what's next is to make sure that we just stay focused on, our corporate morals and ethics and head down the path that we're heading. We're not looking to come up with the next great thing. And, that's not how our company operates. The things that we do, the things that will change, the things that we've changed in the last 20 years all come from what the students tell us that they need and what teachers tell us that they need. And so, what's next for us is to keep listening and to keep doing what we've been doing and to hope that it continues to let us grow at the pace that we've been growing and, continue to grab market share the way we've been able to grab it and hold on to it. And, so I think, my kids tell me that, my life looks boring to them. And I say, well, I worked really, really, really hard to not have things that seem exciting to other people because I've had my fair share of excitement in the past and it's not always fun. But we'll certainly have some things coming the next couple of years that will, hopefully continue to move the needle in our favor. But like I said, the biggest thing we do is listen because there's stuff coming that nobody's even thought of yet. There are teams of students that are in high school and college right now that are working on stuff that I'm just looking forward to see what that is and see how we can incorporate it into what we do or help take advantage of it or even partner with those kind of companies. So. Hopefully, more than anything else, help me and my family to stay healthy, and that's our future.
And if somebody is watching this and they want to learn more about Link Systems International or to continue to follow your journey, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, they can reach out to me on Twitter, and it's @Forese, Forese, my last name, and our company is link-systems.com, and so you can go to our website, and there's ways to reach out to people there, and of course. If you visit the Mission Matters website, you can always find ways to contact me there. And I also believe all my contact information is in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll leave links to all that in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over and check out your site, grab a copy of the book, all that good stuff. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging with the platform or listening to an episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, their story, and really what we can all learn from that so that we can all grow and really gain together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Vinny, really, it has been a pleasure. Thanks for coming back on the show. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. I appreciate all your time.